My name is Aina. I'm 16 years old, and if you had met me a few years ago, you would never have guessed I'd become a handball player. Honestly, you probably wouldn't even have guessed I liked sports. I was small, quiet, the type of girl who tried to blend into the hallways of our public middle school in the Bronx. I grew up in a neighborhood where the rumble of the subway was like a heartbeat, where street vendors shouted from corner to corner, and where basketball courts were always full no matter the weather. Handball wasn't common around here. Most people didn't even know the rules. But I remember my father telling me one morning, before heading to his construction job, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding." Proverbs 3-5, he said it while tying his work boots, the smell of coffee filling our narrow apartment. I didn't understand the depth of those words back then. I was just a kid. To me, it sounded like something adults said to sound wise. But years later, those words would become the anchor that held my life together. I was 12 when my gym teacher at PS 112 practically pushed me into trying out for a small after-school handball program. She said I ran like someone who carries fire in her lungs. I laughed because I didn't feel like fire. I felt like fog, scattered, slow, unsure. The first time I touched a handball, it felt strange. Heavier than a basketball, even though it was smaller and rougher against my skin. The gym smelled like old rubber mats and sweat, the long fluorescent lights buzzing above our heads. The echoes of the ball slamming against the walls felt like thunder. Something inside me stirred. Not confidence, just curiosity. But curiosity is sometimes the door that leads us into the life we never expected. When a coach from a youth sports program in Brooklyn came to observe our session, I hid behind the taller girls. I didn't want to be noticed. I didn't want expectations. But still, he noticed me. After practice, he called me aside and said, "You're not the strongest, but you're fearless without knowing you're fearless." I didn't respond. I just thought about my father's verse again. Maybe trusting was the first step. By 14, I was officially part of the Brooklyn Youth Handball League. Nothing fancy, just mismatched jerseys and borrowed gym time in an old school building in Bushwick. But to me, it felt like wearing a future I never imagined for myself. The practices were intense. Bruises on my shins became normal. The solace of my shoes thinned out from the rough wooden floor. I traveled by bus and sometimes by subway, carrying my backpack and my handball gear stuffed inside a plastic bag because we couldn't afford a proper sports duffel. My mom, who worked long hours at a laundromat, would wait for me with a warm bowl of soup on the table. She always said, "If God put this dream in your path, He will give you strength." I wanted to believe her. I really did. But believing is hard when you are the one who keeps missing the shots. During my first real game, I missed 3 goals in a row. 3, the kind of mistake that turns heads. I remember walking off the court, feeling like I had swallowed glass. When I got home, my dad was sitting by the window, still wearing his dusty work clothes. He asked me what happened. And when I told him, he didn't scold me. He didn't even look disappointed. He simply said, "You're judging yourself based on what you think you understand. But God sees beyond your mistakes. Trust Him, Aina." That night, for the first time, I didn't pray to win. I prayed to stay, to keep going, to not give up on myself. End of part 1. If you enjoyed it, please consider subscribing to the channel. The year everything changed, I was 16 when everything began shifting in ways I couldn't ignore. It wasn't sudden like a dramatic movie scene. It was subtle, like when the sun starts rising before you even realize the sky is changing color. Maybe I was maturing. Maybe I was tired of running from myself. Or maybe God was opening doors I didn't even know existed. That was the year I met Carla. Carla was everything I wasn't. Tall, strong, loud. She played pivot like she was made of steel beams and stubbornness. She transferred from a school in Sunset Park, and it felt like she carried Brooklyn energy inside her, fast, fierce, unstoppable. The first time I saw her train, I whispered to myself, "How can someone be so sure?" What I didn't know was that Carla wasn't sure at all. She just hid her fear better than anyone else I had ever met. Carla and I became close fast. Not because we were similar, but because life pushed us together. We both came from families that worked too hard for too little. We both knew the sound of rent arguments whispered after midnight. We both knew what it was like to walk past sirens on the way home. Handball wasn't a hobby for us. It was an escape. A place to breathe. A place where our names finally meant something. One night, after a brutal training session, we sat on the bleachers of the old gym in Bushwick, both sweating, both exhausted. Carla nudged me and said, "Anna, you have something different from the rest of us." I almost laughed. "Yeah? What's that?" "You don't quit." "That's not true." "It is." "You're scared as hell and you still show up." Her words hit deep. They stayed with me. Because deep down, I always felt like a house built on shaky ground. Like one strong storm could bring me down. But maybe God was strengthening my walls without me noticing. That season, our coach pushed us harder than ever before. He got us into a citywide tournaments, something bigger than anything we'd played until then. Practices felt like marathons. My arms ached. My legs trembled on staircases. My shoulders burned. Some mornings, my hands shook when I tried to tie my shoes. And in those moments, I remembered what my mom always said. If God gave you this path, He will give you the strength. But faith is tested most when you feel weakest. There were days I cried in the locker room. Days I stared at myself in the mirror and wondered, why me? Why did God choose me for this? But something inside me refused to be silent. A small voice, like a whisper carried by the wind. Trust me. One afternoon, after a scrimmage that went horribly wrong, I sat alone on the court. My mistakes echoed louder than the bouncing balls. I had missed passes, missed shots, missed opportunities. I felt like the weak link, the mistake, the one holding everyone back. The gym was empty except for the soft hum of the lights. Carla found me there, staring at the wall as if it held all the answers. "Rough day?" she asked. "Worst one yet. You're thinking too much." "I'm just tired," I whispered. "Of what?" "Of failing." Carla sat beside me, stretching her long legs. "Anna, no one outtrains you. No one outprays you either." I smiled weakly. "You think God cares about handball?" "I think God cares about you," she said. "And if handball is part of your story, He's in it too." I didn't say anything, but those words burrowed into my heart. A few months later, our coach announced we had qualified for the New York State High School Championship, held in a huge facility in downtown Brooklyn, the kind with polished floors and bright overhead lights that make everything look more important. When he shared the news, the room erupted. I stood frozen. Me? In a state championship? A girl who once hid behind teammates so the coach wouldn't pick her? I wondered if I deserved it, if I belonged there, if I could handle it. That night, lying in bed, listening to the distant sirens of the Bronx, I repeated Proverbs 3-5 out loud. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. And I felt something warm spread through my chest. Maybe I didn't need to understand. Maybe trusting was enough. End of part 2. If you enjoyed it, please consider subscribing to the channel. The morning of the championship seemed surreal. Handball, the sport I loved. The sun barely touched the tops of the buildings in the Bronx when I left home, but the streets were already awake. Cars honking, people rushing to work, kids laughing on the sidewalks. It was the soundtrack of my life. But that day, it felt different. It felt like the city was holding its breath for me. My parents walked me to the subway station. My mom held my hand the entire way, as if I were still 6 years old. My dad kept whispering prayers under his breath, his calloused fingers brushing his worn Bible. Before I swiped into the station, my dad stopped me. He placed his hand on my shoulder and said, "Remember what carries you, Anna. Not strength, not talent, trust." I nodded, but inside my heart was a storm. When we reached the arena, my breath caught. Bright lights. Huge banners. Hundreds of people. A polished court that looked like it belonged on TV. I felt small. So small. Carla slapped my back. "Don't freeze now, Bronx girl," she joked. "I'm breathing," I muttered. "Try harder," she said, grinning. But behind her laughter, I saw fear too. We all felt it. The arena swallowed every sound and multiplied it. Every footstep echoed. Every whistle sliced the air. The crowd roared like a wave crashing against the court. I kept repeating to myself, trust, trust, trust. From the first whistle, everything moved fast. Our opponents were strong, taller, heavier, more confident. They played aggressively, cutting angles, blocking shots, jumping higher than I'd ever seen. The first 10 minutes felt like drowning. I missed my first shot, then my second. I slipped once and fell hard on my elbow. The scoreboard glowed like a threat. Bronx 6. Brooklyn Tech 10. Carla shouted at the team, trying to fire us up. Come on, wake up, we're not done. But the doubt in my chest felt heavy as concrete. At the timeout, I sat alone at the end of the bench, staring at my trembling hands. I whispered, not even sure if God could hear me in all that noise. Lord, why did you bring me here if I wasn't ready? And then I felt something. A warmth, a peace. Not loud. Not explosive. Just a quiet voice inside me. You are not alone. Trust me. I inhaled, long, deep, and stood up. When the second half started, something changed. My body didn't feel lighter, the pain was still there. But my fear loosened its grip. My steps felt more certain. My passes more accurate. At one point, Carla looked at me and said, "You back?" I think so. Good, because we need you. We began closing the gap. 1 goal, then 2, then 3. The crowd started shouting my name, a sound that felt impossible, surreal, overwhelming. Anna, Anna, INA. Bronx kids, Brooklyn families, strangers cheering like I was someone important. For the first time, I felt like I belonged there. With 2 minutes left, the score was tied. 2-3, 2-3. The gym felt like it was shaking. The coaches screamed plays. People waved signs and towels. Drums, whistles, stomping feet. But inside me, everything was silent. We regained possession with 30 seconds left. Our coach called time. He looked at us, exhausted, sweating, trembling, and said, "This is it. 1 play." Then he turned to me. "Anna, the final shot is yours." My throat tightened. "Why me?" I whispered. "Because God put something in you," he said softly. And I trust it. I didn't know whether to cry or run, but I nodded. I took my position. The arena lights felt hot on my skin. My heart beat so loud I thought the entire gym could hear it. The whistle blew. 12 seconds. Carla passed the ball to me. 10 seconds. A defender rushed at me. I dodged left. 8 seconds. Another closed in. I bounced the ball behind my back, something I'd never dared before. 6 seconds. I saw the goal through a narrow opening. 5 seconds. My arm lifted. My legs pushed off the floor. 4 seconds. Everything slowed. Sound, movement, time. And then, like someone whispered into my soul, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart," I released the ball. 3 seconds. The ball flew. 2 seconds. It hit the post. 1 second. My heart stopped. But then, it rolled in. Buzzer. The arena erupted. People screamed. Carla tackled me. My teammates piled on top of us. Strangers hugged me, crying, shouting, laughing. I felt weightless, carried, held. My parents ran onto the court. My mom was sobbing. My dad lifted me in his arms like I was still little. He whispered into my ear, "I told you, Aina." God does extraordinary things through ordinary people who trust him. And for the first time in my life, I believed it. Life didn't magically become easy. I still had doubts, still had fears, still had days when my heart felt heavy. But now, I understood something powerful. God doesn't ask me to be strong. He asks me to trust. Trust when I'm tired. Trust when I'm scared. Trust when things don't make sense. Trust when the world feels too big and I feel too small. Because he never wanted me to walk alone. Looking back, I see that girl hiding at the back of the court, afraid to be seen. Afraid to fail. Afraid to try. But that girl didn't disappear. She learned to walk with courage. Because courage isn't the absence of fear. It's moving anyway, and trusting God with every step. I don't know where handball will take me. Maybe college,
Maybe a national team.
Maybe coaching. Maybe telling my story to girls who feel as invisible as I once did. But I know one thing, I never walk alone. And I never will. Because on the biggest day of my life, in the loudest gym I had ever seen with 12 seconds on the clock, God held me. And I trusted him. If you enjoyed it, consider subscribing to the channel.